witches, I'm Liz and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today's video is going to be about a history of Wicca, witchcraft, and how it came to be what it is today in a modern day. I posted something on my Facebook page that garnered a lot of attention. The post itself said something to the effect of, if you're going to practice witchcraft, know and acknowledge that there is a very real religion behind it. And I had a lot of people in agreement with me, but I also had a lot of people who were disagreeing, and that's totally cool. I love the debate, and I love hearing from other people, and I love hearing your experiences, your beliefs, and where you are coming from. That's one of the major reasons I started my Facebook channel. But eventually it turned from a positive discussion to negative tearing down of me, but not just me, anybody else who was in agreement with me. And there was a specific person on my page, who I'm not going to say their name, but I had to ban from my Facebook page. Because my Facebook page is not a place to be bullied. It's not a place to cyberbully. It's not a place to push people around. It's not a place to curse at others. If you disagree with me, or if you disagree with what someone else has said on my page, have an actual adult discussion in the comments about it. That is awesome. But do not say horrible and mean things about me or my followers, because you will be blocked. I do not have time for such negativity in my page, and I refuse to entertain it. With that little rant over, I want to say a little bit of a disclaimer here, that what I've learned and what I believe and my views, where I am coming from, could be completely different from your beliefs and where you're coming from, and where your core knowledge of Wicca comes from. And this is also very strictly about witchcraft and Wicca. And that was one of the other things said on that Facebook post, was that there are a lot of different types of magic, that Wicca or witchcraft is not the only kind of magic. And that is 100% true. There's shamanism, there's left-handed, there's right-handed magic, there's chaos magic. There's all kinds of magic in the world, and there are a million ways to implement all of those different types of magic and different variations on all of those different types of magic. So I'm not going to be talking about all of the varieties of magic. What I'm going to be focusing in on is witchcraft, the history of Wicca, witchcraft, and where they intertwine. So I apologize to any chaos magicers, any left-handed, any right-handed, any shamanism. If you guys want me to do videos on informational style videos on those type of magics, please leave a comment below, and I will do all of my research and put it out there, because I would love to learn. Or tell me about the type of magic that you practice, because I would love to learn it. One more disclaimer before we start this video. What I know and what I've learned and all of my information could be vastly different than what you know and what you've learned. And that's because paganism, Wiccanism, shamanism, paganism, I'm going to use paganism as sort of an umbrella term in this video, was attempted to be stamped out. There was a very real time in our history that the powers that be at the time, mainly Christianity and Catholicism, attempted to destroy paganism. And in that attempt of destruction, any knowledge of paganism was put underground. Any literature about paganism was burned, buried, or destroyed. All temples were burned, buried, and destroyed. And paganism itself survived inside the people who followed pagan. And from word of mouth, from mother and father to children, done behind closed doors, until it was safe for pagans to be a little bit more open and to write down their beliefs once again, which at that point, it had been lost for so many years that we are not 100% sure how ancient pagans practiced different Sabbats, or how ancient pagans celebrated the moon phases. We can guess and we can piece it together, and that's about the best that we can do. So unfortunately there are so many different versions of the origin of paganism, the origin of Wiccan, that, like I said, my information could be vastly different than yours, and that is totally okay. If you heard something different, or if you believe something different, please leave it in a comment below. I would love to learn what you know, because as a Wiccan, one of the major tenets is to know your craft and to learn the knowledge, and I will learn all knowledge possible. So now that all of that is out of the way, I am going to finally get into this video, and I am going to start with the Druids. Very much know that Druidism is very, very different from what modern Wicca is. It's very different than what American Wicca is, which I live in America, the United States, and what's considered American Wicca is very different than European Wicca. I feel that we should start with the Druids, and I'm going to explain to you why. So the Druids were the holy people of the Celtics. They were so important to Celtic life. They were the voice between the Celtic people and their gods. It took so many years to become a Druid. It truly was a life calling. It took upwards of 20 to 30 years to become a full-fledged Druid. And the reason that it took so long to become a Druid is because the Druids didn't record any of their teachings or their ceremonies or anything that any of their knowledge in a written form, because the Druids believed that memory was sacred, and to write it down would make it mundane. So, as a Druid, you learned so much. You learned astronomy and folklore and religious songs and all kinds of knowledge that you were expected to memorize. The Druids were stood over all Celtic ceremonies, all Celtic sacrifices. They were exempt from military practices. They were exempt from taxations. They could literally walk on into the middle of a battlefield and stop a battle or a war in their tracks. And the reason I bring up the Druids is because of the way that they practiced. Unfortunately, the Celtics were, along with the Druids, specifically the Druids, were eradicated by the Roman legions. And if history has taught us anything, it is a Roman gets what a Roman wants. Rome was nothing to fuck with. And unfortunately, the Celts and the Druids just couldn't stand up. And because they didn't write down any of their information, an insane amount of it was lost. Some of them survived in Ireland and Wales, where they went underground and hid, but a lot of the information that we have and we know about them lives in Europe and Irish folklores. So we don't know a whole lot. This is what scholars and anthropologists believe. And the reason that I bring up the Druids to you guys is because of the way it is said that they practiced. Their holy places were not buildings. They practiced their ceremonies in forests because they believed that the earth was a living thing and earth was a god or a goddess to them. So they practiced surrounded by their gods in the woods. They believed that all life was sacred. They believed that all living things worked together in a universal way. They practiced, and all Celtic ceremonies, because of this, were done following the cycles of the moon. They celebrated different things at different times of the year. They celebrated the seasons. Does any of this sound familiar to you guys? These are things that live in the core of Wiccanism. It lives in the core of most types of magic, to be honest. Now, when I bring up the Druids and it comes to witchcraft or magic, the fact that the Druids were magicians or that they were magic people and that they performed witchcraft is debatable. It's subjective. Like I said, a lot of the information is lost, so we don't really know. We can only base off the folklore. But I do think that to be considered the holy people of your race, and to be the person to stand over all ceremonies and sacrifices, I do believe that there had to have been a certain type of magic to them. And so that brings us, so that's where I think that the origin of Wicca came from, where the heart, the core of it came from. So now, fast forward to the 1930s, where a man named Gerald Gardner said that he met a Wiccan coven, a witch coven, in the middle of woods when he was hiking alone. He said that they took him in and taught him all of their practices and their ceremonies, and then came to America and started the religion known as Wicca. And back then it was W-I-C-A, not W-I-C-C-A. This is where people get confused about where Wicca, the religion, came from, because a lot of people will say this is its origin. And in America, this is its origin. But as I said before, Wicca goes back many, many years in Europe and Wales. Gerald Gardner got the word Wicca from the term wise one. Wicca directly means wise one, which of course falls in line with what Wicca is. And unfortunately, a lot of the things that Gerald Gardner said is not true. He was proven to be sort of like this very swindler type man. He was a disciple of Aleister Crowley, which is a name, if you know anything about magic or involved in the magical or spiritual community, it's a name that you will recognize. He is a very well-known chaos magic and right-handed magic all right-handed magic in general. He is a well-known magician in that term. They've discovered letters between the two of them that showed that Aleister Crowley heavily influenced the creation of Gerald Gardner's Wicca. Gerald Gardner was a Mason, he was an anthropologist, and I don't think that most Wiccans follow very closely to what his Wicca is nowadays. I'm sure there are people that do, and if you do, that is great. That is totally your prerogative. But I think that it's definitely morphed since Gerald Gardner created it. So since it has sort of branched out to a million different types of things, and by that you'll hear people calling themselves, you'll hear people saying that they're witches, you'll hear people saying that they're not witches. They'll say they're kitchen witches, they're eclectic witches, there's snow witches, there's astronomy witches. There are all types of spirituality that lives inside Wicca. I think Wicca itself could truly be rebranded as paganism because of the nature of it. Wicca truly encompasses most of the pagan religions, and it truly is a melting pot of most pagan religions. But the one thing that all Wiccans agree upon is something called the Wiccan Rede. And I'm going to read to you what the Wiccan Rede is. And I do have to read it off this paper because I have yet to memorize it because I'm a bad witch. So the Wiccan Rede is: By the Wiccan law ye must, in perfect love and perfect trust. Might the words in Wicca Rede fulfill, and it harm none, do as ye will. Lest self-defense it be, ever mind the rule of three. Follow thee in mind and heart, and merry meet and merry part. So let's sort of break this down. This is the thing that almost all spiritualists, everyone that practices witchcraft, and again, I'm speaking specifically about witchcraft, it is a true pillar and core belief of all types of paganism and spirituality. So now I'm going to sort of go into what Wicca itself is about to me. What I believe Wicca is about, what the Wicca I follow is about. Like I said, it is a melting pot. With Wicca, you can add, subtract, you can incorporate so many different types of things to make your practice truly about you, to make your practice truly right for you. You can identify as a solitary Wiccan, and your patron god is the Egyptian god of Ra. but you're still Wiccan. Your patron god could be Odin, but you can still be considered Wiccan. But to me, the core and simplest explanation of Wicca is that Wicca is a polytheistic religion, a polytheistic, nature-based religion that generally believes in a god and a goddess, a feminine and a male figure, balance of the universe, and respect in life of all things. Now, witchcraft is using your intentions and spiritual tools to harness and focus the energy of the universe to achieve something that you want, to achieve a goal. And this is a practice that comes from a lot of different places, a lot of different backgrounds. And the reason that I and most people would link this to Wiccanism is because the rules of witchcraft are the same as the rules of Wicca. The threefold rule, the harm none, those are core tenets to practicing witchcraft. Now, it is 100% possible for you to not be Wiccan and practice witchcraft, and it is 100% that you can be Wiccan and not practice witchcraft. They are separate things. One is a religion and one is a practice. They are separate things. But they are separate things that live so closely parallel to each other that I truly believe to understand one, you should understand the other. So I believe that learning at least the basis of the pagan Wiccan practices would help you in your craft. And that is how I think they are linked together. And that is how I think they should be linked together. So that is a sort of brief and scattered history of Wicca, and I guess you could say my personal beliefs on the matter. Leave a comment below what you guys think. If you like this video, leave a comment below if you agreed, if you disagreed, where you felt it comes from. Subscribe if you want to, follow this if you want to. I have my Instagram and Facebook page linked below if you guys want to go check that out. And as always, my brother and sister witches, merry meet, merry part, and merry meet again.